Medieval Total War is still one of my favorite games of all time. It was the first Total War game I ever played back in 2002, and when the expansion Viking Invasion came out with that focused map of the British Isles, that period of Anglo-Saxon and Viking history, I was all over that thing for years, and like probably a lot of other people, I decided at some point to try messing up the copy that I had. So what we're looking at here is a mod that I made many years ago, originally, of course, just for my own personal satisfaction. I've just called it Dark Age back then. I probably would have come up with a slightly more evocative title, but the point was to take the action back to the aftermath of the withdrawal of Rome from the British Isles and the influx of Germanic settlers, the Angles, the Saxons, the Jutes, and sort of this glorious mashup of history that no one is exactly sure quite what happened. Now, at the time, I was very influenced by the books of Bernard Cornwell. There's a trilogy that he did that begins with The Winter King, that is essentially an attempt at a historical retelling of the myth of King Arthur. And in addition to that fictional source, I also had read a bunch of other historical or quasi-historical works about the period of the 5th to 6th centuries. It's always been a period that I've found very interesting, probably because of that mystery. Now, I would say this video is not so much about self-promotion as it is about looking at old baby photos of yourself, because there are quite a few things I would certainly change about this mod if I were to make it today, but I wanted to share it in part because I would not have even had this to share were it not for the work of a few other people on the Total War Center forums. So back in the late 2000s, I was stumbling around with this mod and attempted to share it with people on TotalWar.org. I needed a lot of help to even get it to that publishable point, but then I sort of forgot about it. Years passed, new games came and went, I got involved with other modding projects, changed computers a few times, and pretty much all record of this mod was basically lost. However, a few years ago on the Total War Center forums, someone posted some questions about this Dark Age mod that he had seen for the original Medieval Total War, and wondered if anyone could help him get it working because it was missing some essential things. Well, thanks to the work of Maxon Rufus, who had downloaded the mod years ago, gotten it working for himself, and was able not only to do that for himself, but also to recreate it for others, he was able to get the mod uploaded to the Total War Center forums, where it could then be downloaded by me as well as anyone else. So while I am solely to blame for the mod itself, the work of making this accessible to people belongs to folks like Maxon Rufus and Axelon at the Medieval Total War subforums. So thanks to those guys. Now, I thought it might be fun just to take a look at this and sort of see what I was thinking, maybe play a few turns as some of the factions, and I'll have a link down below to that relevant forum thread if anyone is curious about getting this going. Full disclosure, there are going to be some gaps. It was not a totally finished and totally polished mod. If you're expecting something as complex as 4th Age or even as complete as Viking Invasion 2 or Norman Invasion, you will not find it here. It is, however, playable. I did put some effort into thinking about different unit rosters and thinking about some of the buildings, but it was not terribly detailed. As you can see, I didn't even bother writing a description for the mod overall. But if we click continue, and then we can load up the different factions, we can see that I did put a bit of effort into writing descriptions for at least the new factions. So we have here 3 Saxon factions, the Angles, the Saxons, and the Jutes. I just went with the very traditional interpretation of 3 different groups. The Angles sort of, I guess they straddle, would that be the Humber River, I guess, with some of them just to the north side of it and some of them to the south. I think the idea here was that I needed to represent the fact that Angles were responsible for founding both Northumbria as well as Mercia. So I needed to get that representation there. The Jutes, of course, traditionally associated with Canterbury, so that they are Kent, so they're down here. And the Saxons with Wessex and Sussex, I guess, and so they are down here. These are 3 pagan factions. I believe they're the only pagan factions in the mod, and so as such they're going to have some different unit rosters and some different building options. There are a lot of Celtic factions, and again, this is where that Bernard Cornwell, that fictional influence comes in. I do not know anything about the veracity of these as actual factions, but to be fair, probably not a lot of people do. I think the start date for the mod is AD 430. So it's about 20 years after, the Britons famously get that letter from Rome saying, look to your own defenses. And so we're not quite sure exactly what happened after that. But in the takes that I was reading at the time, you had the option for lots of different levels of survival of Roman influence. Some of them would be more Celtic-centered factions, like these Dumnonians here, and some of them more Roman, as we will see. So the Dumnonians are down in Cornwall. We have the Irish, which I've largely left as their starting position in Ireland, but also given them some land in, I think it's David? I'm not quite sure how to pronounce the Welsh or British names. But the idea was that historically there was some thought that Irish had crossed and settled parts of southwest Wales, possibly during this time. So that gets them out into the larger island. Then we have the Men of Gwynedd. Of course, some of these names got cut off here. I probably would have shortened them for a more polished-looking version of the mod. Sort of a North Welsh faction. And the Men of Ragged. I remember these guys as being one of my favorites, just because they had a very difficult start. And of course, the North has lots of romantic connotations in terms of the poetry and the heroism and the doomed, last stands of all these different factions. So the Men of Ragged were one. We also had the Picts. I largely left their unit roster unchanged from the original, but I gave them a little less territory in the beginning so as they wouldn't be too overpowered. And then we have the Romano-British. Now this is something that I would certainly revisit if I were redoing the mod from scratch. These guys were intended to be the Arthur faction. And so this is the sort of hybrid blend of native Celts versus the surviving traditions of the Romans that may have still stuck around. We've got the faction leader. I gave him the name of Tyrannus because I guess I was under the impression that that was the name for leaders at this time. That may have been the case. But in any case, this was a sort of an interesting faction. They're in the middle of some very wealthy territory, but they're surrounded by lots of potential enemies. So difficult to sort of hold what you start with. And then we had the Scots, who of course controlled territory on both islands. And then the Strathclyders. Again, this is another name. So the naming conventions is another thing I would probably change. Probably Alt-Clut or Strat-Clut would have been a more accurate name. But I was sort of going with this weird amalgamation of Latinized names versus more English familiar names. So we'll see that the Votadini is what I went with over here. This is the faction associated with the poem The Gododin, which again I'm probably not pronouncing correctly. But this is a Latin sort of version of their name. I'm not sure I went with Latin here, but not for here. But at any rate, we've got a couple of North Welsh factions, essentially, which have some good cavalry, some decent aggressive infantry, but maybe not as much staying power as some of the Anglian factions. And then I just went with the Welsh, apparently. I get a little bit lazy here because we do have, the Men of Gwynedd, and then we've got some Irish, but I just didn't bother changing the original name. Now for the new factions, I wrote new descriptions. But for factions that existed already in Viking Invasion, I just left it as it was. Never got around to changing that. But let's start up a campaign as, let's start the Romano-British and see what they have to offer. So here we are in the good old 2D strat map, Risk style, board game style. It certainly makes things a bit easier for the AI and, certainly has some advantages, but also disadvantages. So the Romano-British I imagined as kind of a cavalry faction, as I said. So their bodyguard here is a Campware bodyguard. Now for the units, the factions do have different units, most of them anyway. I think the Welsh and the Irish stayed essentially the same, the Picts too, probably. But the other factions were reimagined, and one of the things that I did was just take units from anywhere I could find, like the base map of Europe, for example. This is, I believe, a Mongol unit or a Steppe Lancer unit, one of those. And I just thought, yeah, it looks close enough, so we'll throw it in the mod here for the bodyguard unit. So it's some of that heavily armored kind of Sarmatian cavalry tradition, I think is what I was going for. And we do have some other cav units here in the settlement. We've got a unit of what I called Sagittarii. And these are some Byzantine units from the base game. I think this is just Byzantine cavalry. And it's a horse archer unit, kind of a hybrid in a sense. We also have regular archers and a unit that I called Trigmen. This is a unit that pretty much all of the Celtic factions have in some form or another. Not the Welsh, I think, not the sort of the Men of Ragged, so sort of like the Western Welsh don't really have them. but few of the factions do. And just to give a bit of variety there, I guess, the thing with them is that they had a good attack, a strong charge, but they were not that great at holding a line. So how they compared versus something like the Celtic warriors that the Welsh can train, I honestly can't remember. But it's a bit of visual variety anyway. Now, one of the things I definitely changed was some of the buildings that always annoyed me in the base game. In Medieval Total War and Viking Invasion, you can build watchtowers and border forts. And those are basically like free spies and counter spies. A watchtower will let you see all the provinces that border your province, and you can actually see the armies that are being built as well. So right now, although I can see the armies and the relative strength of the armies by the size of the color in the banner, I can't actually click on the armies or the settlements to see what the units are. If I had a spy in these settlements, or even an emissary like this guy, may as well bring him over here for the next turn, we'll be able to see what they actually train. But the other way to do that is by using a watchtower. I guess I felt at the time that watchtowers were maybe too easy or something, but I definitely remember being annoyed with border forts because they were just a very easy way to catch agents that were moving across the map, and that meant that your own agents would get killed, sometimes without you really knowing because an enemy faction just threw up a border fort, and vice versa. So I thought it might be more fun to sort of not rely on that quite so much, make it a little more hardcore mode, I guess. To counter spy, you would need to have your own spies that you train, or assassins, and keep them in your provinces. That also gives them a bit of experience and makes them more useful on the offense as well. But it turns out we can actually train a lot here, and so we've got a couple of other units we haven't seen yet. Yes, Brythonic Cavalry. This is another name that I would probably change. I just was kind of running out of possible names, but the idea behind this is it's a Lancer unit. This is another Byzantine unit, by the way, Byzantine Lancers from the European game. And then we also have some more disciplined infantry. We've got the Trigmen, right? Like sort of your basic, I think this is the tier 1 unit. But at higher levels, eventually you can train these guys. They're essentially feudal sergeants from the medieval game. But sort of, I think the intention was to suggest some Roman discipline still lingering in this faction. I think this is a unit that is only trainable by the Romano-British. We also have urban militia. They always seemed strange to me to include in the Viking Invasion game. The Mercians got them. But in this one, I'm sort of picturing them as more sort of a town watch kind of unit, sort of left over from the Romans or from the garrisons, I guess. They're very handy for this faction in that they are the only way for you to get anti-armor units, and very cheaply at that, but a pretty small unit size to kind of make up for it. So because we're the largest faction on the map, surrounded by lots of other enemies, we need to look to our defenses, and I sort of made this a little difficult. We do have enough money coming in that we can build some of these warrior holds in all the provinces that don't have them, and this will act as the sort of castle building, basically so that there's a place for us to retreat to if we're attacked or if we're defeated in battle. We may as well not waste any time here, and at our capital up here, I'm going to go ahead and train some cav, and we'll sort of get going on the rest of those units. I think it also makes sense to probably take advantage of the iron we've got here. We've got the iron resource, which means that we can go for something like a metalsmith, make our weapons better. Okay, actually, you know what? I think I'm going to start an attack. We're going to go ahead. We've got an army down here in Essex, essentially, and there's a couple of kings around here. I really love the old Viking Invasion models for the royalty. These are the king units. But what we can do, typically when you attack an enemy king, if you do so with superior numbers, he may withdraw and abandon the province completely. I'm seeing there may be an opportunity here because we've got the West Saxons right down here, and they also own territory over here. I guess they don't actually own Wessex itself, but Dorset, so they'd only gotten the coastlands at this point. So what we could do is maybe drive them away into another settlement and get some free cash. It looks like they've got a port. They've got at least, this is I think the village, so this is the 3rd tier of settlement, so there might be some good stuff here, and if not, we can at least get a battle out of it. So we're currently neutral to them, and actually let me just check the diplomacy. I believe we're neutral to everybody, even the rebels, initially speaking. So we will basically have to pick our enemies, or have our enemies pick us. We're going to keep training in Rock'n'Setton because that's the only place we can train currently, and I'm a little concerned about this wing of things. We're going to go for an alliance with the Welsh. I'm not holding my breath on that, and I am rather concerned about this. The Angles have 3 provinces to start off with, so we're just going to have to keep training here, Going to build up Mercia itself. This is a province that has iron. And also, one of the cool things about Medieval Total War is regions sometimes had bonuses for certain units that were thought to be somehow historically connected to them. In this one, this is just from Vanilla Viking Invasion. It gave an urban militia bonus. So I just kept that with regard to the Roman and British and allowed them to train that unit. So we're going to get this up to the point where we can train urban militia, hopefully before the Angles decide to attack. Now let's see what they decide to do. Okay, good. It looks like the Angles are heading north, and we're invading Sussex. Now, I forgot to show you, but you're able to tell a little bit about the type of battle you're about to fight when you are on the campaign map. If you select the province and then mouse over the province you plan to invade, it'll tell you what kind of border you're going to be facing. And I could tell that we were not going to be fighting over a river, so we won't have to worry about bridge battles. We just barely do not outnumber the Saxons. And they've got a bit better command, and they've got a few more units than we do. 13 more. We'll see if that matters. But as you can tell, the lack of agents in the province means that we have no idea what we're going to be up against. All right, Sussex, we'll just... we can actually mouse around a little bit. I guess we're going to be starting over there. The AI is going to be somewhere. It'll all become apparent shortly. Fine throughout the day. Now this is where it would be nice to have a bit of information. We don't know how many archers they have, if any. I'm going to go ahead and attack. We've got at least one unit of archers. Okay. And with Medieval Total War, you could essentially choose the starting formation of your units, but you couldn't deploy them if you were the attacker, so I can't move my guys anywhere. So we've got 60 archers, we've got our 100 trigmen, 100 spearmen, and then we've got our horse archers, somewhat armored horse archers, as our general unit. We'll see if that's going to be enough to make a difference. I'm not sure. This could be a disaster, but at least we'll get to see how the battles work. So what I typically do is just group all the units together, and we can go ahead and see where they are. Oh, I guess we can't because I've got the battle limitations. Well, let's go ahead and move our guys over to the left. We'll try to avoid the trees. We're close enough to be able to tell they've got some armored stuff. So, Edgemunetus, so these are like sword companions or something. Again, the language here, I'm really not sure. This was based on like a decade plus previous understanding that I had. We also have some Hearthweru. I think that may be, yeah, that's the Royal Bodyguard unit, essentially. This is a foot infantry armored unit that the king and the princes have. So they've got 2 family members, so this is probably going to be a disaster. What else do they have? They've got 100 spearmen. They also got some... Okay, berserkers. That's not good. Not good at all. I don't think they have any ranged, though. So if we have any chance there, it's in our ranged. Our infantry is not up to this task, so we're about to see a defeat for sure. Let's see if we can at least get into a good position to cause some damage. But yeah, this is certainly not a battle I'm holding out a lot of hope for, but we'll just kind of show off. Now, what I should have done is, because we didn't quite outnumber them, I should have been a little more cautious, taken a little more time to prep, and if I had trained like one more unit, we would have outnumbered the Saxons. So if I had brought down a unit from Mercia, maybe, then we would have had enough men, I think, to drive them away. Because I really think that what influences the enemy king to withdraw is just numbers. I don't think it has anything to do with quality. I think it's if you outnumber them and you attack the king, he's going to withdraw, and he's not going to withdraw to the castle either. He's going to abandon the province completely. That means you can just get a bunch of loot, destroy buildings for more loot, burn it to the ground, and then go back to your own province if you want, or try to hold it. But there are some interesting challenges with this older version of the game. So what I want to do is try to move over to these softer targets and try to do damage to them. The only way we have any chance of doing damage to the berserkers would be through our arrows. But, since they don't have any ranged, I guess we can send our cavalry over. All right, what are we shooting at? Spearmen? All right, so yeah, these are swordsmen. And these guys are, oh gosh, they're worse than I thought. It's basically the Viking invasion bodyguards. So yeah, we're gonna lose this one for sure. I guess I could withdraw these units, but let's throw them in just to see how this all balances out. It's going to be extremely poor, no doubt. We're going to try to do my best with the micromanaging of the cav anyway. Alright, so we got them down to 46, or maybe they were at 46. Down to 45, 44. Alright, those guys are going to cut into my spearmen, no question. Probably going to rout. Let's get the horse archers around to the rear. And there go the Trigmen. Now, horse archers in this game cannot fire on the hoof. They have to be stopped to shoot, so they are not nearly as overpowered as they are in Rome Total War or any of the later games. They also have a morale debuff to skirmishing, so they're going to run away in a little while. We're probably going to rout off the field completely, but they're going to just march away to skirmish. But if they get chased too much, that's going to hurt their morale, and they may just completely run away. That's to sort of prevent the AI from just leading your men a merry chase, or vice versa, so that theoretically you don't have to kill every last unit. You can just drive them off the field. So that's probably going to happen in our case. Let's charge them in, though, and see how they do. This is going to be a disaster. We are armored, but we are horse archers. I don't think we're going to get any kills here. Yep, there goes the general. And let's go ahead and just withdraw him, and we'll speed up the battle. So again, this was a foolish battle for us to take. We never should have fought this in the first place. Ah, yeah, the ransom mechanic. So on a campaign map, when you win or when you lose, you sometimes get this option to either pay ransom to get some of your men back, or to ransom some men to the enemy and get some cash back, or to just execute them completely for no cash, but to hurt them more. So you know what? Let's go ahead and pay for that. And because we attacked and left a small garrison in Essex, we've got some unrest. So we've got a fairly small rebellion there, has to be said. And unfortunately, our emissary was not successful getting an alliance with the Welsh, but our general got the good runner Vice, so -3 morale. That's really going to hurt. So again, this is not the optimal start for the Romano-British. Let's see what this rebellion is. Just 60 archers. We could probably deal with that. Let's try a larger force. We've got a couple extra units trained up now. Let's try one more battle that might be a little more successful and send it against the Angles. We can show off some more of the cav, I guess, including a bodyguard unit. And we'll just send them all right at Dara. And let's actually empty out everything here. We'll take all of our units and march them all up. I'm not sure if that's going to be enough to drive them out, but this again is their capital, as you can tell. This would be a nice place to take. Okay, so interestingly, I saw the king withdrew, and that means that rather than retreating completely off of the field, out of the province, men are going to hole up in the castle under siege. The king doesn't let himself get trapped like that, but the men are going to. So we conquered the province, but we can't really do anything with it because we still have this central settlement under siege. Okay, so there's the invasion. I'm just going to go ahead and automatically resolve that. Victory, very good. Only 2 men lost. And let's execute all the rebels. We've got bandits in Mercia because I've not been paying attention. But Lord Hewell, although he is a good runner, has now achieved his 2nd rank, so that's good. So in this game, rank or command stars had a direct impact on valor, which is, what is that in Rome Total War? Experience, essentially. Right, got our stockade in Mercia, but we've got a little rebellion there. That's fine. I'd like to get one more kind of climactic battle. Let's go up here and attack Bjornis. Now, we may not get the chance. The king may come right back down and attack us with all of the surrounding units, so we may have a defensive battle here. Oh, and he's not. He's going over to Elmet, and the Angles have decided to withdraw. So here's the thing. Sometimes you do end up chasing the enemy around the map. Well, we're going to keep that up. Okay, we've got the East Saxons. Oh, the Jutes are attacking us, understandably. They've got, let's see, a couple of feared men. Yeah, this is not going to be an interesting battle. Let's just auto-calc that. We did win. We got some ransom back. And the Strathclyders are the strongest military faction, which is odd. Alright, we've got another command star from Lord Hewell. And let's see. Where are they going to go? Well, you've got nowhere to go. We could attack the people of Gododin. They're completely neutral. This is a completely pointless battle, but it'll at least show us some of the different units. Alright. Yeah, they've got no place to retreat, so this is going to be a battle for the survival of this faction. It's always interesting to have these one-province factions. They tend to get fairly strong because they don't expand out, because they're a little shy, a little concerned about that. They outnumber us by, they've got an extra 100 men over on top of what we have, but again, we don't know what that is. However, it's going to be our Tyrannus, or our faction leader, against theirs. Alright, we're here in Lothian. I like to get that mini-map sort of off. I don't know if there's a way to completely shut off, but you can resize it so it's not so distracting. We'll go ahead and attack. We've got some archers again. They probably have some as well. And let me take a look at the units here before we get too far into it. So here's it's our bodyguard unit. Don't look too close and look at the Mongol-style hats there. But, a lot of this game is just gesturing towards the visual representation of the units, right? It's about using your imagination somewhat as well. Here's our Lancers, based on those Byzantine Lancer units, and we've got some Horse Archers as well. Those are going to be the units that are going to be the hardest ones for the enemy to deal with, if we can use them right. But cavalry is a bit harder to use in Medieval Total War than it is in the later games. We've got some Trigmen, we've got, we got some Civitas Infantry. These are the feudal sergeant types. And then right next to them, we've got the regular old spearmen, which pretty much every faction has. What's the difference between these two? These guys are a little better, a little more expensive. I think that's about it. Spearmen are going to get a valor bonus in a few provinces. These guys may get a valor bonus in Ruck and Seton, I can't remember. But there's, in some cases, there's just very minor differences. So let's group everybody up so I can maneuver them the way I like. Where are the enemy? Probably just on the other side of that tree line. Okay, so we'll try to maneuver up towards a bit of the high ground, speed up our maneuvering. Oh, they've got some cav too. Oh no. Okay, what do we have here? Oh, it's their Jav cav. That's right. So these are based on the Spanish jinetes. I always mentally thought of them as jinetes, but that's certainly not correct. We're just going to let our spears soak up some of this damage, and hopefully these guys are going to suffer as well. That's right. These guys are a decent cav faction. So this is their faction leader. The prince unit leads these Teali. And then, there's the king over there. They've got a prince, it looks like. Let's pull the archers back. Use this unit. I don't want to get totally. All right. Let's. How do we run? How do we run? Oh yeah, Control R. That's right. Alright, it looks like the Teali are thinking about attacking us in the flanks. Let's just hold the line for now. Alright, there they go. Let's turn around and hit them. This is their faction heir, probably. They're winning, but now we've got them sandwiched. Alright, let's see if our line can hold out. Let's have the Trigmen counter those Trigmen, and let's move our Sagittary up. Oh, this is going to be bad. They've got a lot of cavalry coming at us. Turn the Civitas Infantry down towards their spearmen. They should win on 1-to-1, but our spearmen have already routed. It's just a cav fight down there. Let's get these guys off of skirmish and bring our horse archers maybe around to do something. Let's hit the Trigmen in the flank. How about that? Alright, we're doing okay. Actually, we're winning easily. How's this fight going? We're getting some damage done. Spearmen, we can rally them, and in fact, they are back in the fight now. But you want to be careful. You want to only use those guys very sparingly once you've rallied them. It takes a while for them to get back in any meaningful sense, and the Trigmen have managed to beat our Sagittarii. I should note, I think I am playing this on expert difficulty, so This is certainly adding to the challenge. I haven't played Medieval Total War in a very long time. Our Sagittaria are gone now, completely out of the fight. We're just, you know, holding on with archers, essentially, in the flinders of our remaining army on the right wing. Our bodyguard's kind of a beast, though. He's still winning. Still got that Lancer Cav. But they've got so many. We're not going to win this one either. Let's see. The archers are possibly going to rout. They're wavering currently. I don't know if we can rally these spearmen yet. Nope, there he goes. From the enemy. Well, let's just speed it up. Times like this, let's just end and see what the casualties look like. All right. Yeah, I mean they're horrible, right? I don't know that we actually have a place to retreat to. Ransom demanded. Yeah, I think we've got no choice but to pay. All right, we've got unrest. We still technically possess Berenice, and it's about to fall. And we have an heir. Okay, he came of age right down here as well. I probably should have waited another turn or two for him to actually appear. But we've got our Tyrannus back. He was, I believe he was ransomed. Maybe he wasn't captured, actually. But he's definitely a good runner. This guy is a secret perversion as well as a great warrior. So it's always interesting the random traits you're going to get on this game. But at any rate, I think that's probably sufficient for a first look. This is certainly shaping up to be a disaster. Possibly salvageable at any rate. In this mod, or in this game anyway, it pays to be fairly aggressive. I was certainly rather too aggressive. But that type of thing where you keep chasing the enemy king around can actually be fairly effective. Even if you don't gain control of all of the provinces, you're at least stopping their production for a while and giving him bad traits as he continues to withdraw. So something like that could be effective. If I'd done a little more prep, then this could have been more successful. It does have to be said, though, that I did intend for the Romano-British campaign to be one of the harder ones. And so this is all kind of working as intended. So once again, if you're interested in checking out the mod, I mean, again, it's not a finished mod. It's not a complete work. I'm certainly not holding it up to comparison with actually complete polished mods produced by people who know what they're doing. But this is just a curiosity. If you are curious to follow up and take a look at this for yourself, or maybe even tinker with it, feel free to check those links in the description below. And once again, thanks to everybody on the TotalWarCenter.net forums for making it possible for me to take a look at this once more. Very fun to get back into the mindset of you know, what I was thinking of when I set this up and started messing around with it all those years ago. So thanks very much for watching, everybody, and I hope you'll stick around for the next video. Until then, take care.